Come on in, welcome to my home. Today we are going to talk about a focal point. Okay, now lots and lots of videos have covered focal points, but I'm going to cover this in a slightly different way. Simply because a lot of times people tell you when you're focusing on a focal point, for lack of better words, you have to think about, well, what it is that you're focusing in on. We're going to take this from my perspective, which is my home. I have a 3-room condo, and that's really important to remember because what my focal point does and what your focal point might do could be slightly different, but you can take the same information and use it. So let's start it off. So the focal point is, well, that's what we have to define. The focal point is where you want your eye to go. Now, that might not be where your eye automatically goes when you go into a room or when you go into a home. It might be where you want it to go. So in my case, when I first come into my house, my focal point is not my living room couch wall. Nope, not even close. My focal point is actually my dining room hutch. Right back there. From my front door, that is the first thing that you see. Why is that important? Because I have a theory. I have a theory which will help you with a lot of things. My theory is the focal point mood board. Probably asking what's a focal point mood board? Well, that is easy. A focal point mood board is basically this area, this focal point, which will then tell you what the rest of the house will sort of be like. It actually is really cool to operate and think in this way, whereas from my hutch, which is not set up right now, we'll do that a little later, from my hutch you will be able to see all of the elements that I use in my decorating. Will this be all the elements that I use in every single room? Well, no. But you'll be able to get the overall idea, theme of what's going on with my house from my entry focal point. And that really helps with making your house a little bit nicer or cohesive. I think cohesive would be a better term than nicer, simply because once you enter in, you know what to expect. And then you're going to, of course, have the unexpected things. And because my place is very small and it is very hard to change around furniture, I have to change around the items in my home. If you have seen my other videos where I talk about what is and what isn't the main thing that I'm decorating for, this ties into that. Because in my living room, as you've seen a lot of times, people concentrate on the focal point of their couch wall. You know, that big wall behind your couch, and you're like, ooh, this is really nice. I should put all of my effort into that. And then you only see it for about 1 minute, if that. Most of your time, your back is to that wall. Well, that's sort of pointless, isn't it? You've spent all this time and money on something that you are never going to see. In my room, my focal point is actually my TV hutch, and that becomes really important simply because I know that I've got that there. I'm not going to try to pretend it doesn't exist or try to hide it because, well, it's huge, and it really is the only place for that will actually work in this spot. But you need to think about where your focal point really is or where you want it to be. If you have something that you want to take away the attention from, say you have, I don't know, something bizarre in your room that you're like, ooh, I need to do something to hide that, it might be better to create a focal point someplace else. Well, how do you create a focal point? That's actually pretty easy. First thing to do is to gather up a whole bunch of stuff that you like. Things that you love to display, things that have meaning to you, things that just make you happy. See how those things tie in together. Once you have that group of objects that make you happy, now you can figure out how to make those a nice cohesive display. One of the easiest things to do to make a nice cohesive display, put it up on wherever it is that you're putting it. Once you have those things up there, then you can start fooling around with it. You can start moving things, making things work where you want them to work. Because it's a nice theory to talk about, well, I'll display this here, this there, but until you put it into practice, that might not work. That might not work at all. What it will actually work is when you put something there and feel free to move it. feel free to move it as much as you want. If you find something is not working in the way that you thought it would work, just move it. Change it out. Maybe there's another object that you'd like to have there instead. That is okay. Now, I've talked a lot about how I'm very, very much against disposable decor. That kind of stuff that you're just going to buy, use for one season, and then get rid of. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants you to do that. What you can do is you can go around and think about all the things which you have, the things which you are going to want to pull out from your seasonal box of stuff, from your collections of things that you've got back in dark corners, which you can then bring out and make prominent. And you've put it up on your shelves and you played around with it and played around with it and you're still like, nope, not working for me. Okay, let's think about this. When you think about nature usually moves in curves. And so when you think of curves, you have a curve which goes up and a curve which goes down. So a lot of times it's nice to think about those things as in a mountain range. What do you want to have at the peak of the mountain range which will just basically draw your attention to it? It might be a single object, it might be a group of objects, and then everything else builds up to it. It might be that you're doing the opposite of that, where you have your two ends, and then you have your higher objects on the ends, and everything comes down to the center. If you are working like with something like a TV, that's really easy to do, because what your eye does is your eye follows those curves down to the center, which is the TV. Kind of simple. Now, if you are looking at this saying, well, but I want to have something big in the center there, okay, that's absolutely fine. What I did in my case is I have this huge candle vase, or vase, depends upon who you are, which is very neutral, clear. It has neutral color candles in it, so that it sort of disappears when the focus is so supposed to be on the TV while we're sitting there watching TV. But then when the TV is off, the candles sort of reappear. It's very much in the way of how to get that idea across there. The other thing which you see that I do, if we reference back to my hutch, you will see that a lot of the themes of the greenery, the fur, the pattern, the color is brought onto my TV. My TV area, I have the same pattern that's there. I have the red put in there, the fur from the stuffed animals, the brown tones from the wood. All of that gets pulled back together so that way it creates a cohesive focal area. Because one of the things which you're going to find is you do not want your two focal areas to fight each other. You might have a predominant focal area, which in this room is my TV, if you're in the room facing that way, but then right behind me, the hutch becomes a secondary focal area. I don't want those two things to fight each other, but realistically, you're never truly seeing them together. They're never side by side, they're never seen that way, so one becomes secondary, one becomes major. Usually the hutch becomes the major focal area, so I will spend most of my time, doing the hutch. And with that, like I said from the beginning, it becomes my mood board. This is the area where I put all those little pieces that you're going to see appear in other rooms. The colors, the textures, the patterns, those will go up on the shelves along with the things that are normally in there. The now 72-year-old tea and coffee set that my grandmother had, some of the glassware, things which I do hold dear and things which I really enjoy are mixed in with seasonal items which change out. You will notice that there are plants up on my hutch. Why do I have the plants in there? If you know anything about me, you know that I like plants. So that gives you some sort of idea that I bet you there are going to be plants in there. You'll also notice that I'm not a minimalist at all. And the hutch tells you that. The whole entryway gives you a sort of overall theme. You can see that there's probably going to be other areas in my home where I have these other things, and I make sure that I do that. I really do. because it's so much easier to just, when I'm not sure what to do in a room, I can refer back to the hutch and go, oh, hey, there's something I can pull out of this and put that sort of pattern or texture in this next space. Our eye goes in a Z pattern, usually left to right, top to bottom, left to right. Why did I tell you that? Because it's easy to do. It's really easy to think of your eye traveling that way. And so you pull the colors and those sort of things, the brighter colors you want to put in that pattern. It's so much simpler. Does it have to always do that way? No, it doesn't. You can play around with this. You can have things in there that don't necessarily relate to anything, just as long as you like it. It has to be something where you will mess around with this, fool around with this, and totally enjoy it. And you have to think about where you are seeing it from. One of the big things that I find is that almost never is somebody right up on my hutch. So the making these really fine, minute details, no, they're going to be further back, so I will step back, look at this as I'm arranging this, and go, oh, hey, I can then do this color, or this needs to be raised up here, that needs to be raised up there. Also, the other thing is, when I was first doing my hutch, doing the arrangement of it, I always have the doors open so I can get things in, get things out, put things in there. Close the doors, because one of the things that you will find is I have this big bar that goes down the center of the hutch, and you can't see anything there. So that is something to think about. It's always good to, as I just said, step back, look at this and see what plays well. Is there something that draws too much of your eye to a certain area? That can be a good thing or that can be a bad thing. It's a good thing if that certain area is on that Z. If it's on that Z axis, that way you can say, well, I did that on purpose, now is there balance? I have mirror in that hutch simply because it reflects light. Yeah, it reflects light. But finding the focal point and then just playing around with it. Don't ever stop and think that that's it, I'm done, I don't have to do anything else. No, as you evolve, let your style evolve, let your focal point evolve, let things change around, and it's okay. Just keep it moving, keep going. As you want to change, let it change. As you change your room around, change it so that you can have something. All you need is something that's there that says, hey, look at me first. It draws interest to your room. What about you? Do you have a focal point? Did this help you, does this inspire you to create a focal point? Something that you're actually going to see versus something that you're never going to see for more than 30 seconds. Because you notice I didn't even address the couch wall simply because it's my least interesting wall. Would I like to have some artwork on it? Oh yeah, I'd love to have a big piece of artwork on it. Am I going to get one anytime soon? Not that I know of, because it's not that important. The TV is more important. So yeah, well, let me know what you thought about that down in the comments. I'd like to take this time to thank my patrons who actually suggested this video about how to do a focal point and what they should look for in a focal point. And I hope this helped, because it really does just come down to finding what you like, taking that thing and extrapolating on it so that way it pulls your eye. And like I said, the Z formation really helps, or that arc, just so that the things pull your eye into whatever it is you want them to be focused on. And if you're interested in getting these videos ahead of time, and I'm now starting a new thing where these videos, if you are on Patreon, you will not see commercials on these videos. They will be commercial free, so that way you can watch them, enjoy them ahead of time without commercials. If you're interested in that, that is linked down below in the description. It's also linked probably in a card right there. Also, if you can't do Patreon or you're not interested in the Patreon, just liking and sharing this video, commenting on the video, helps the YouTube algorithm know that I'm interested in this. It also gives me an idea of what things I should do another video on. As I've said, that these are my opinions. I am not a professional about this. I'm just a person who does this, enjoys it, and I try to do this with what I have, and hopefully that I can show you how you can do this with what you have too. So, before you start anything, take a look at my next video. I hope I get to see you again the next time you stop by.